If a military plane loaded with biological weapons crashed into your town's water supply, what would you do? In this How to Beat video, we'll follow the town sheriff, see if we can make better decisions, and ultimately attempt to beat the TRIXIE virus in the Crazies. If you think you have a better way, let me know in the comments. If you like these How to Beat videos, consider liking and subscribing. Before we start, I gotta let y'all know about some new stuff. I just set up my merch store with the Nerd Explains logo tees and mugs, so everyone else can identify who to team up with if shit goes down. Us nerds gotta stick together. And before you say it, the shirts also come with a guarantee that I won't cannibalize you if the food runs out. That's what you call an exclusive perk. Besides the official logo merch, I made something custom, the Bloody Banana Split. If you don't get it, you haven't watched enough of my videos. I'm gonna be making more custom designs commemorating special Nerd Explains videos and jokes. Also, you can now flex on everyone else by becoming a channel member and getting custom evolving zombie badges next to your name in the comments. Thanks again for the support, guys, and the handful of gals out there as well. We start out following Sheriff David. The crowd's having a good time at the ball game until a deranged man stumbles onto the field with a Rossi Overland double-barrel shotgun. David tries to de-escalate the situation, but the man doesn't appear to be right in the head.
You lay that gun down. Rory?
That was a quick-ass draw. Let's take a step back and break that situation down. I'm not sure what the actual protocol is for police in this situation, but I'd imagine you'd already have your gun unholstered and or pre-aimed, or at the very least the holster button pre-popped for a quicker draw. My thinking is that you'd want to go wide when walking up to him, so you ended up on his side with no innocents behind you. Walking up to Rory like David did potentially put the entire crowd in the line of fire. I'd have the deputy get everyone out of there, like actually have everyone leave the area, then come up on Rory's other flank so they both have clear lines of fire with no nearby bystanders. We have to remember that this is a small town, so David knows Rory. He knows he's a drunk but also a decent person, so he gives them the benefit of the doubt and closes the distance to try to have a heart-to-heart. This is a risky play because closing the distance can help you de-escalate the situation and give you more of an opportunity to grab Rory's gun away from him, but it also means he can shoot you way more easily. In the movie, David walks straight up to Rory and still has a crowd of innocents behind him. Closing the distance in this case means that if Rory starts squeezing the triggers, he'd take the entire load of buckshot and his partner could kill Rory, but everyone behind him would be safe. Another tactical error, if you close the distance, you'd want to have your deputy on your flank also close the distance. You don't want to be close and him far, because then he's more likely to accidentally shoot you. Realistically, at that distance, Rory would not need to shoulder the gun or aim it. He already had it pointed at David's chest and could just pull the trigger. It's a tough situation when somebody already has a gun drawn on you. You either have to distract them or divert their weapon away from you before you go to draw your weapon, because they could easily kill you before you got your gun out of the holster. David was too far away to physically divert Rory's gun, so drawing on Rory was exceptionally dangerous, though he didn't really have a choice. This is why you'd want to already have your gun up before engaging. However, David did have some key advantages. He perceived that Rory was drunk or under the influence, which would slow his reaction times. He would also have noticed that Rory's Rossi Overland shotgun has hammers on both tubes that need to be cocked back before firing. These were not cocked back as far as I can tell. David's also using a standard issue Glock 19, which doesn't have a safety that needs to be flipped off, decreasing the time to fire. All of this combined with being the first to initiate the draw means that Rory is unlikely to be able to get the shot off before David. For a small town sheriff, this still takes a lot of skill to pull off under stress, especially when you know that Rory was a decent guy. They take Rory's body back to the medical examiner, who says that the toxicology report from his autopsy is going to take a week or so to be completed, which, like every other movie, is long enough that whatever was causing the problem will kill everyone before they figure it out. We really need to improve these toxicology report times. We never figure out what's going on until it's too late. Afterwards, the sheriff goes to console the grieving family, and it goes about how you'd expect.
You had to do it. I had to shoot the town drunk.
It's not like he had a shotgun pointed at my head or anything, but I guess you can't really expect a grieving wife whose husband you just blew away to think rationally. Everyone seems to think it was just Rory being drunk as usual, which is honestly the most reasonable assumption based on what they know. The next morning, David shows up to the sheriff's office and the phones are blowing up, which is odd for such a small town of 1,260 people. One of the phone calls is the medical examiner, who says that Rory was actually not drunk. In fact, he had a blood alcohol level of 0.0. Well, if he wasn't wasted, then what the hell was wrong with him? David returns to the baseball field to try to make sense of it all. Ben, who is at the shooting, is doing the same, so David tries to talk to him.
Hey, Ben. 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 Hey, you all right?
Don't worry, the kids are resilient. They're gonna be all right.
Yeah, this is a bit weird, but it's still reasonable and passable behavior for someone who also witnessed the shooting and probably has some PTSD. Meanwhile, David's wife, who is the town doctor, is examining another man who has some sort of sudden onset mental illness or brain impairment.
She worries too much. I'm fine. Just a little tired.
You got any plans this weekend?
She worries too much. I'm fine. Just a little tired.
What's worrying is that the cases of mental illness are sudden onset and occurring in multiple people who were otherwise normal not days ago. Again, this is a town of like 1,200 people. It's not like she's a doctor in a big city with tons of random people coming in. The problem is that until this information is gossiped around enough, everyone has a fractured view and no consensus can be made on the state of the situation. Nobody by themselves has enough information to act. But from a God's eye view, things are going south fast. Interestingly, whatever is happening is initially only happening to the men. Their wives and kids are not affected, and it doesn't seem to have spread to them. Deirdre takes her husband back home from the doctor, and later that night, she notices that the combine in their shed is turned on. Maybe Bill's just going for a little late night farming. Yeah, no, you're f***ed. I hope I'm not the only one who is internally screaming at this lady to not stand in front of the active combine with her deranged husband on the loose. You're just asking for this to happen.
You died, zombie!
Combines can go about 5 miles per hour, which is like a jog speed. I'm sure she can get out of the way if it comes at her, but what if she trips? I mean, why risk it? And she walks up closer to it. Lady, please, keep your hands and feet away from the spinning blades. If you would kindly walk along the perimeter of the shed to the side of the combine, you will have access to the cabin where you can discuss your issues with the operator. You just got played by your psycho husband who's now attempting to murder your child. Nice. Honestly, you're lucky he was not in the combine, or what's left of your corpse would be sitting in the grain tank right now, and your child would be hopeless. Personally, I think she should have brought her son with her to the shed. Hear me out because I know it seems counterintuitive. Your significant other is exhibiting severe mental derangement all of a sudden. You take them to the doctor, then that night you hear the combine spinning up in the shed. You're obviously scared enough to not want to bring your kid into a potentially dangerous situation, which is why you should. If you go to the shed by yourself and something happens to you, your kid will not know what happened, and he might come to the shed to find out and get killed, or get killed by the husband later on. If you bring him but keep him back a bit, he will be able to see what's going on, and you can keep an eye on him, but he won't be in danger as long as you don't hold his hand while you flail in front of the active combine blades like an idiot. Leaving the kid back at the house by himself when you cannot 100% know where your deranged husband is a bad play. Not to mention how nuts it is to have been planning on going to sleep in the same bed and house as him, when you clearly are this afraid and nervous about his mental state and your safety. If my girlfriend suddenly started staring at the wall all day, unaware of anything going on around her, and repeated the same phrases over and over again, I will definitely not be going to sleep in the same bed or house as her, and my dog will be staying with me elsewhere. I mean, yeah, I'd take her to the hospital and stuff too. You get what I'm saying. By now, you've no doubt heard about the shooting of Rory, a man who suddenly went full psycho. That shit's gonna be in the back of your head. You're gonna be thinking that maybe the same thing is happening to your husband. She gets back to the house and finds her son, and he takes her into a closet where he tells her that the dad was coming after him with a knife. I want to take a second to point out that hiding in a closet is really not a good idea. You have nowhere to run, and it's such an obvious hiding spot. I remember playing hide and go seek when I was a kid, and literally the first place you check is The closets. You gotta get creative. I heard about an incident where law enforcement raided a guy's house, and they ended up finding him inside of a bed mattress. Yeah, I mean, they found him, but they were US Marshals, not some psycho. I don't think hiding inside of a mattress is a feasible or good decision either, though. Like the closet, you have no escape, and if Bill decides to sleep on that bed, good luck holding your breath all night. She could try to ambush him and whack him upside the head with a flower vase, but the dude's got a knife, and if you don't knock him out in one hit, you're probably dead. Personally, I'd have grabbed a lamp pole, smashed out the hallway window behind them, and then aimed for the bushes. I've seen some parkour videos. You just gotta roll when you hit the ground. Bill comes up the stairs, and surprise, surprise, he found them in their super secret hiding spot. Damn, that got me. Wait, what's that smell? Yeah, I have some problems with this too. Closet doors shouldn't be that hard to kick open because interior house doors are usually hollow and weak, and in their case, the doors open away from them. You could argue that they were just trying to keep a barrier between them and him, but I'd think the strong smell of gas would light a fire under your ass to leave the closet. Unfortunately, Deirdre doesn't seem to understand the concept of kicking the door down and instead jiggles the doorknob like it's just gonna magically open. I can't stand when people do that. Just standing there jiggling the doorknob when it's locked. Like, come on, start ferociously kicking the door down by shoving your heel into it. It's your only chance. And for those curious, you want to shove your heel into the spot just next to the doorknob. Sheriff David shows up to the crime scene with his wife? Does he normally bring her on calls? Because that seems super dangerous and unprofessional. The last thing you need is a highly emotional person coming onto the crime scene and freaking out.
Oh, damn it! Oh, God!
Okay, by now David has to know something is up. That is 3 encounters with deranged people who were all normal not days ago, all now exhibiting murderous tendencies. It's like The Happening, except everyone wants to kill each other instead of themselves. Unfortunately, that toxicology report is still 4 or 5 days away. Good luck getting Bill to do a CT scan or getting any information out of him. Meanwhile, some hunters down in the marsh find a parachute stuck in the trees. Maybe there's a supply crate with something cool in it. Nope. Seems like it'd be hard to get any work done with a guy who just murdered his wife and child, staring you down like that for every second of the day, unmoving for hours. I have trouble concentrating when my dog is looking at me for pets. From what we can tell, it's not transmitting via bite. It doesn't seem to be airborne or contact-based either, or the families would have gotten it too. But there's not enough info to really understand what's going on. They get a call from the hunters about the downed pilot and go investigate it. The corpse is unrecognizable, but the uniform and insignia is military. The medical examiner thinks this bro's been hanging out in the marsh for about a week or so. Based on the reports of something crashing into the marsh about a week or so ago too, there may be a downed plane somewhere nearby. It seems like the chances of them finding that plane within the same day is really unlikely, but as you'll see later, David is one lucky man. It looks like a C-130 military cargo plane or something similar. Definitely military. Initially, you'd want to send some divers in to see what's what, but because there's a high likelihood that this is connected with the town's events, there may be something toxic in the water. The only safe way to investigate the wreckage is with the hazmat dive team, which Ogden Marsh definitely does not have on staff. A cheap alternative would be to take water samples and pictures of the dead pilot, his credentials, as well as the plane. They go to the town water person, and he confirms their suspicions. The same water that the plane is residing in flows into their town's drinking water supply. Not only that, but the water reaches Rory's house first. Rory wasn't drunk on booze. He was drunk on a top secret biological weapon. Apparently, whatever was in that plane survived the entire water treatment process and made it into people's homes where it infected them. This revelation carries 2 massive problems. The first problem is that this was caused by the military and government, and this plane crashed a week ago, but there's no soldiers or men in black to be seen. You would think they'd be out here within a day of the initial crash to recover their plane, which was carrying God knows what. The fact that they aren't suggests that they're either grossly incompetent, or more likely they know that something really bad was set loose and recovering the plane is the last of their worries. If I had had to guess, right now they're probably setting up a wide quarantine zone around the entire town. If this situation is as severe as these raging clues would suggest, anyone that drank the water in the past week is already infected unless they're somehow immune. Being a small town that's forgettable, the military and government can still retain plausible deniability to cover up the incident, saying that a chemical plant exploded or something. You should expect roads to be blocked and the internet and cell service to be blacked out. It might seem hasty and rash, but fleeing is the only option you might have at this point. Being a government blackout, they have records of everyone in the town and may make you disappear if you try to escape and talk. Hopefully David had the brains to take pictures and samples, which he could use as leverage or a dead man's switch to preserve his safety. The second massive problem is that this plane was downed for a week and has been flowing something toxic into this town the whole time. Water in the distribution network might have hit Rory first, but it's been a full day since that incident and a week since the plane crashed. Literally everyone in the town would have been drinking that water by now. It is infected if they can be infected. Even David and his deputy, who was sipping fresh weaponized pathogens every morning, are on borrowed time unless they're somehow immune. Doesn't hurt to break out the bottled water instead though. David heads out to the classic overindulged mayor to convince him to turn off the water supply. I think it's pointless by now, but it wouldn't hurt. He gets pushback because the lack of water would kill the crops and the entire farm town would go bankrupt. There's really no use arguing with the guy that won't put some clothes on to discuss something important like this. I was just gonna say they should break in and shut it off anyways. Any toxicology report or hard evidence would take too much valuable time to put together and present, and the stubborn mayor would just shut it down anyways. Deputy Russell locks up the lever and notices that Bill is not standing anymore. I mean, no shit. Who's just gonna stand there the whole time? Even infected psychos gotta lay down once in a while. It's a good thing David stopped him from going in, but couldn't he have just told him to wait up? There was no need to jump scare the poor guy. I don't know what Russ was thinking. Who would have been idiotic enough to go into a cell by themselves to check out a guy who's infected with the same kind of military pathogen which has potentially led to Rory trying to murder David, as well as Bill murdering his wife and kid? Besides the fact that Bill might try to murder you, your lack of PPE might expose you to the pathogen if you aren't already. They correctly assess that they are not equipped to deal with this man and check his transfer status. Lo and behold, the internet and cell service are out. Wonder who that could be. It's quiet down at Ogden Marsh's main street. Too quiet. A VPN won't help you in a blackout caused by the military quarantining a bioweapon accident. But until that day comes, you should consider equipping your cyber self with Surfshark. Let me get existential and ask you this. How much time do you spend on the internet? Probably more than physically interacting with other people. If you think about it, your cyber you is more you than your physical body is. In the physical world, you lock your doors, possess weapons, and check behind the shower curtain when using the toilet. But most people surf the web with their cyber spirit completely exposed. Surfshark's got a full array of digital defenses to enhance your abilities and thwart attackers. With Surfshark, you'll possess an all-in-one solution to eliminate ads, malware, trackers, phishing attempts, censorship, internet borders, content restrictions, account theft, and so much more. All these defenses can be armed on an unlimited number of devices, so your phone, laptop, desktop, tablet, and phablet are all covered. What's this digital defense package cost? Like $2 a month if you use my promo code NerdExplains for 84% off and 4 extra months for free. But Nerd Explains, what about free options? If you aren't paying for the product, you are the product. It's pretty self-defeating for a free VPN to be tracking and selling your information. The best case scenario for a free VPN is they trash your internet speed and experience to get you to upgrade to their paid plan. So just sign up for Surfshark with my code and defend your digital you. What do you do now? A military plane carrying a deadly pathogen crashed into the drinking water that everyone's been gulping down for a week. There's no cell reception, indicating a quarantine and suppression of everyone in the town, and now the entire town is dead-ass silent. You're now on a tight timeline. The infection is clearly past the incubation period. and everyone should be considered potentially hostile. With the possibility of the government silencing and denying this catastrophe, the military cannot be trusted. The cell reception is down, so there's no good way to create a dead man switch with your evidence. Your best bet is to get the water samples, pictures, and credentials from the downed pilot. Then go home, grab your wife, and start walking to the nearest city, which should only be a few hours away. I say walking because every road's going to be blocked by the military. You're going to have to avoid these unmarked vans too. I know you're a cop and you want to start saving everyone, but it's too late. Sure, there could be survivors that are immune, but it's highly unlikely. There is a much higher chance that you will get murdered by a psycho. Or not. Again, investigating every sound and abnormality is unwise. Your focus should be solely on escaping with your wife and your life. If someone is clearly in need of help, then yeah, go help. But wandering in stores and chasing weird noises is a surefire way to get dead. This place is a hellhole waiting to erupt. David heads into the funeral home and quickly discovers this.
Behind you.
It's almost as if everyone drank the water, is infected, and is turned into a psycho like you hypothesized. Dude, get up or roll over sideways, god damn. You would have had serious problems if Russ didn't show up at that exact second, which realistically, he would not have. And on that note, why were you out there by yourself with no backup, with everyone turning into a version of Bill and Rory? David finally realizes that this place cannot be saved, and it's gonna degenerate hard and fast, and goes home to warn his wife. But she stubbornly refuses to just leave because, and I quote, she's their doctor. What part of everyone's an infected murdering psycho now that you didn't get? You have no idea what the issue is, how it's affecting them, and these people are not treatable as evidenced by me almost getting neutered by a bone saw. You can't do shit. This problem is way worse than a small town doctor can handle. I swear, some of these people are so stubborn that you could tell them that you found a nuclear device with a 30-minute countdown, and they'd tell you that they need to stay to treat the wounded. David apparently learned nothing from his funeral home encounter and heads out by himself to check out their shed because his wife saw someone. Yeah, it's probably a murdering psycho like I was just telling you about. Do you want to go give them a health exam now, sweetheart? No? Then let's go get in the car and leave. David goes to check it out by himself, also leaving his wife in the home by herself. Where the f is Russ anyways? You'd think sticking together and getting some firepower would be smart. Honestly, that was probably the best outcome. They get taken to the FEMA quarantine camps and separated into infected versus uninfected based on elevated temperatures. His wife seems to think it's cerebral hemorrhaging from a virus, but only transferred through bodily fluids. Looks like Judy drank too much of the water.
No, please, please, I'm pregnant, please, no.
I don't know why she's screaming, no, no, no. They're literally trying to help you. They could have just thrown you in the fenced cage outside with everyone else. David gets let out of the quarantine with tons of others because they passed a quick temperature check. Why is it that movies think a handheld temperature screen is conclusive enough to let people out of a quarantine zone? You're dealing with a town of 1,200 people. It shouldn't be that hard to put them in a second stage area where they're more fully tested for the virus. The military must know that there's an incubation period from when the plane crashed to when people suddenly started losing their minds and cerebral hemorrhaging. Anyone who traveled in from out of town or didn't drink much of the water may still be in the incubation period. Letting people leave right now is idiotic. Not to mention, you'd probably want to see if any of the uninfected people had generated antibodies to the virus. Meanwhile, his wife is in the hospital with a front row seat to the unfolding chaos outside.
Tell you what, Kev. Don't ask me why I can't leave without my wife. I won't ask you why you can.
Damn, David just pulled a Jason Bourne. This guy was way too good to be a small town sheriff. As for why that guy can leave his wife, well, for starters, it's a quarantine due to a deadly pathogen outbreak, and maybe it's a good idea to leave her in the hands of medical professionals who understand the pathogen better and can help her. Also maybe because he's an overweight accountant and you're an athletic sheriff who's way better skilled and equipped for the job. Did you honestly think he was gonna ninja onto the bus, sneak past all the soldiers, fight off all the crazies, find his wife, and escape to the city alive? He would 100% have gotten him and his wife killed. Welp, the military quarantine was overrun by a couple guys in a truck. The military does not even try to regain control, and they all hop in their choppers and bounce. Solid work, guys. I guess I understand that with everyone running the gates and scrambling like it's too fast, too furious, you need to re-establish a wider perimeter. On one side, now you can rescue Judy, and there won't be any soldiers there to stop you. But on the flip side, now you gotta deal with all the crazies and bandits, which are arguably more dangerous. Before going in to save his wife, David goes back to grab his 6-shooter while Russ grabs the shotty. David doesn't even know that the camp was overrun yet, so I'm not sure what his plan is. Does he really think he's just gonna wave his .38 special revolver at the soldiers, sweep his gal off her feet, and ride into the sunset? Things aren't looking so good back at the hospital. There's really no time to try to Houdini out of the restraints. He'd just kill you. Honestly, staying quiet and acting dead is her best shot at this point, which she doesn't do in the slightest. Judy, close your f***ing eyes and turn your head back. Oh my god, stop squirming and crying for Christ's sake. He's obviously targeting the alive-looking people. David saves her ass just before she gets the rake. Everyone in this movie has exceptional timing. On their way out, Russ mentions that he was only a little further downstream from the contaminated water supply than Rory was. I really doubt that has much to do with the probability of infection. Everybody had been drinking that water for a week. If you were going to get it, you would have already gotten it. Incubation times and immunity may vary though, so you can't know for sure. Walking in the middle of the street is really dumb. You should be moving cover to cover, slowly and deliberately, checking all the areas before moving, making sure you're always close to cover. They find an operational truck that wasn't booted by the military, but it's owned by the infected hunters from earlier. Looks like the hunting's been good. It's best to let them pass. Not only do they outnumber you, and hunters are usually pretty good shots, but trying to drive out of the city is dangerous and hopeless anyways. The military is going to have every road blocked off, be very trigger happy and paranoid, and not likely to take any chances now. Their best bet is again to walk to the next city. Judy's employee, Becca, who they also saved, runs off into the nearby house in search of her boyfriend. David wants to stay on track and leave Becca, but Judy convinces him to help her find her boyfriend. Judy's argument is that David came back to save her, so why is he not trying to save Becca and her boyfriend too? Well, he saved you because you're his wife, not some chick's new boyfriend that she's only known for a month. Little bit of a difference. The second reason is that he's either infected, in which case he's dangerous, or he's not infected but he's super paranoid, in which case he's also dangerous. And the third reason is that the amount of people in your group is growing too big, and you can't trust Becca or Scotty to not be idiots. Obviously, David concedes and complies with his wife's wishes to try to find Becca's boyfriend, who nearly blows their brains out. How did the military not see them wandering in the open? Seems like the military set up the wider perimeter and are now trying to hunt the infected and re-establish the quarantine medical camps again. Eventually, they're gonna search the barn too. So if you can't sneak out the back, you better put the guns down, get on your knees, put your hands up, and yell that you're unarmed and not infected. Well, that was dumb. What the hell did you think you were going to do? They told you to stop and you kept sprinting at them like a crazy person. This kind of shenanigans is why I was stressing to keep your group small and with trusted people only. Adding people you don't know just increases the chance that you're gonna get a Charlie wild card like Scotty. Instead of surrendering like I was talking about, Russ and David opt to abduct one of the soldiers. Bold move and way less likely to go your way than you think. Realistically, soldiers would not be clearing houses and barns by themselves. There would be an entire squad pouring in and clearing all the angles, especially in such a hostile situation such as this. David interrogates the soldier, asking him what the heck they're doing. I think it's pretty obvious. They're clearing sectors of the quarantine zone and assessing people for infections. Just like Judy, they found that Scotty's mom potentially had the virus and were gonna quarantine and try to treat her. She unnecessarily ran, so they shot her. Her son then ran at them and was repeatedly told to stop, which he didn't, so they shot him too. too. All pretty reasonable actions given the stakes and circumstances. Do you really think they're gonna tell grunts exactly what's going on anyways? David convinces the soldier to report an all clear, and fortunately, he doesn't rat them out, which was also highly unlikely.
If what that soldier said is true, this disease has gone airborne.
Not really. He just said that he was told to always keep his mask on or he could get infected. Like all the doctors and soldiers from earlier, it's standard procedure to wear PPE to protect against bodily fluids and potential transmission vectors. I mean, it could be, and you could take those precautions, but it's not proof that it's airborne. They sneak back over to their home to grab supplies in the old police cruiser. They still think they can drive out of town. David's spidey senses should have been tingling at the sight of their car. It was booted by the military like all the other cars, which suggests that the military was there. But why was it burned and shot up too? Something must have happened here. Someone must have been here that caused an altercation. You can't be sure that nobody is here and that your home is perfectly safe to wander around. Like I've been stressing this whole movie, they need to stay together. You don't need to split up and gather supplies either. You're driving an hour down the road tops, and you especially don't need to take a trip down memory lane by yourself. Well, I guess she's not really by herself.
Judy. Look, I know this is hard, but we've got to keep moving.
Children's music playing in the apocalypse is always a red flag. David was really lucky he was able to get his fingers under the rope around his neck before the Crazies cinched it. If he hadn't, he'd have been lights out in seconds.
This was the gun that killed your father.
Actually, it wasn't. He killed Rory with a Glock 19. And how would you even know? You weren't at the baseball game, nor were you close enough to see what gun he actually had. And if you were observant and saw David around town, you'd know that he likely used the same pistol that he duty carries every day, which is the Glock 19. It's not like a Glock versus a Smith & Wesson M&P here. It's a magazine-fed, recoil-operated pistol versus a near snub-nosed revolver. But maybe I'm being a little pedantic given the situation and her being crazy and all. Russ had to have heard that. It's a good thing the psychos are dumber than our protagonists.
Look at me, you crazy bitch! That's it! I fucking shot him! I did it! You walked on that field with a loaded shotgun! I'm glad I did! They should give me a fucking medal! Finally killed this town drunk!
The throat grab with the knife in your hand is always cool as hell, but I do think he should have picked her up and throat slammed her to the ground while delivering a one-liner. It's just a wasted opportunity. David didn't really have a choice, but the throat shank would have contaminated his blood with the virus from her bodily fluids. Hopefully he's got an immunity or something, or else he's gonna become one of them in a few days. Little Billy grabs the gun, and just before he can get the shot off on David, Russ comes in with the clutch snipe. That was cool and all, but was beyond dumb from a tactical standpoint. I counted a full minute from Peggy firing a round off and Russ sniping the kid. It should have taken him maybe 20 seconds to grab his shotgun and come up to the room. Let's back up a bit so I can try to understand Russ's thought process. He heard a gunshot ring out in the upstairs room of the house, grabbed the scoped rifle instead of the shotgun, then went outside and stood around for a full minute trying to see something through a window that has curtains over it. If David's situation went down any other way, the altercation occurred in another room, or the infected kid was a couple feet to the left or right of the window, Russ would not have had a shot and David would be dead. Not to mention that there were curtains over the window, and the kid's hair and clothing is fairly similar to David's. Russ easily could have mistaken David for the kid. Becca then beats Russ to the room and just rushes inside, which is also stupid because they don't know if the room is actually safe or not. She seems to have a habit of running off impulsively. When Russ finally makes it into the room, he has a hunting rifle in hand. I just don't get why he didn't bring the shotgun instead.
sure.
I can't argue with double tapping the infected to make sure they're dead. The Crazies have shown to be devious and play dead like Bill in the jail cell. David's wife thinks Russ is showing symptoms of infection because he double tapped Peggy and Kurt. I'm starting to get a little annoyed with Judy. She went off on her own in the apocalypse, which endangered everyone else, and now she's complaining that Russ saved their lives and ensured that the attackers were fully dead so they didn't get attacked again. That's rich. They get the old police cruiser working and start making their way out of town, but Becca starts coughing a lot. Russ rightly brings up how dangerous it is to be in the car with someone coughing everywhere. And guess who defends Becca? Mrs. Russ might be infected because he saved our lives in a way that I felt was too aggressive. Judy. What's with the hypocritical two-faced bullshit? Their argument is interrupted by an AH-64 Apache attack helicopter. I know it's an understatement, but that is a huge problem. This specific helicopter is carrying an M230 30mm chain gun with 4 rocket pods carrying a total of 76 M151 Hydra 70 unguided rockets, which have a fragmentation radius of 50 meters, all of which are linked up to one of the most advanced sensor and targeting systems in the world, flown by pilots who are experts at recon, tracking, and eliminating things like moving vehicles. My point is that mashing the pedal has got to be one of the dumbest things you could think to do. You are not outrunning or outmaneuvering it, nor can you hide from it. Your only chance at survival is to stop, get out, and put your hands up. Sure, they might kill you, but they will definitely kill you if you run. David says screw all of that and pulls into the car wash to remove his 5 wanted stars. I bet he really fooled the Apache pilot. That's like Anakin thinking spinning is a good trick. Turns out, the car wash wasn't such a good idea. Becca shouts that she saw someone and all the machinery spins up and starts pulling their car along the car wash tracks. Tactically, inside a car is a bad place to be fighting from, especially one in the middle of a car wash with no clear sight lines. If any of the infected has a firearm and runs up on them, the car doors and windows won't stop any of the bullets. As soon as Becca said she saw someone and the lights came on and David couldn't get the car operational, they should have gotten out of the vehicle and retreated back towards the entrance and found some cover. Then they could clear the building on their terms from a much stronger position and recover their vehicle once the threats are eliminated. This scene in Sicario demonstrates this well. Once out of the car, they can create open sight and fire lines, flank the enemies, and use more solid forms of cover like the engine blocks of other cars, or can retreat if they need to. If they're gonna stay in the vehicle, at least have Becca and Judy crunch down and get as low to the floor as possible to clear the lines of fire for Russ and David. The chaos and confusion causes Russ to start blasting at nothing. Not only does he waste ammo and empty the shotgun before he actually has a clear shot, he sticks the barrel out of the car way too far and loses the shotgun. Russ is turning out to be quite a liability. Just before they make it out, Becca gets a hose wrapped around her throat and hung from the ceiling. For being complete psychos, they're actually pretty clever. Looks like they're walking now, apparently down the middle of the road because they have the collective memory capacity of a goldfish, which is actually a lot longer than 3 seconds, but I'm just trying to make a point here. This is the same road that the Apache helicopter was patrolling, which blew up your car. Yes, an Apache could probably find them walking in the fields, but they're a lot less likely to be spotted in a field than on the highway the Apache's patrolling. Even forgetting the Apache, military and government vehicles will likely have checkpoints and be transporting soldiers and equipment on these roads. So far, they've only been able to avoid the military on sheer luck, which just ran out. David walks out into the middle of the road and tries to stop the oncoming agency van so they can steal it, but Russ goes wild card too and spike traps it. Spike traps don't really cause cars to flip like that, but sure. Under interrogation, this guy reveals that people were getting infected with a bioweapon called TRIXIE, a rhabdovirus prototype with a 48-hour incubation period. They engineered this virus as a weapon that could be used to destabilize enemy nations. He says that the plane carrying the bioweapon was being transported to a disposal facility in Texas to be incinerated and destroyed, and that this whole thing was just a giant accident. My question is, why wasn't the pathogen secured in a black box type container, which is crash proof and fireproof, etc.? That would have prevented this entire mess. The World Health Organization and the American Society for Microbiology list guidance and regulations for the transport of infectious materials. From reading their documents, I wouldn't say it's black box level, but it's close. There's a triple packaging system with limitations on the quantity that can be transported at one time. This triple packaging ensures that if the leak-proof primary receptacle is compromised, there is another layer that will absorb the pathogen, which is also contained in a leak-proof container, with a final rigid outer layer protecting them all from external damage. This should have stopped any infectious substances from surviving the plane crash, especially since the plane seemed to be intact, so it didn't hit the ground with enough force to fragment and rupture itself. I'm also suspicious why a government agent is being so forthcoming about the existence of a top-secret bioweapons program. You'd think they'd have a cover story or mention that it was just a naturally occurring virus that they were researching and disposing of. However, what he's saying sounds truthful and plausible. It's unlikely to be a domestic bioweapon experiment because there's plenty of third world countries that the US can test the pathogen on, where they have a lot more control over the virus and plausible deniability if they lost control of it. I'm not advocating this, I'm just saying. The US has dedicated facilities for chemical weapons disposal, and the preferred method of disposal is incineration, and the preferred method of transportation is a non-stop flight with a military aircraft. Ogden Marsh just happened to be unlucky enough to have the flight make an unexpected stop in their water supply. If you noticed, I mentioned the US's protocol for chemical weapons disposal, because there's no available information on how the US disposes of biological weapons. Reason being, technically, production of biological weapons is in strict violation of the 1972 Multinational Biological Weapons Convention. This is more bad news for David and crew, because if the news got out about the TRIXIE virus, it would cause major problems and destroy any trust with other nations, who would then start their own bioweapons research and development programs. Let's be real though, the BWC is all theatrics, and I bet a significant percentage of the participating nations are secretly developing them already. The problem is that the government has a real incentive to silence any survivors and destroy any evidence the virus exists, aka David's crew. Again, they just need to keep walking towards the next city so they can distribute their evidence like we planned earlier.
It's day 3, and we're still talking, so you are gonna help us.
Okay, maybe Judy was right about Russ. They correctly try to take the guns away from him, but Russ has a backup pistola which he pulls on them. With Russ's declining mental condition, they cannot afford to allow him to have the guns for much longer, so David confronts Russ and is able to get close enough to disarm him. Most people don't understand that once someone is within arm's reach of you, they can hit you or grab your weapon faster than you can physically react, which is why you should never hold a gun out like that within arm's reach of someone who might try to take it.
I'm not right, am I?
I'll walk with you guys. Just a little while longer. Please.
This was a pretty sad bro moment. Obviously, they were longtime friends, and Russ still has the capacity to know he's done for, but he just still wants to hang out with them a little while longer. I say sure, as long as he's not within arm's reach or behind you, but if they get into a situation where they need to stealth it, David's gonna need to let him go. Eventually, they run into the military checkpoint, and Russ volunteers to take one for the team to distract the soldiers so David and Judy can make it across. I'm confused as to why they all can't just walk further down the road where there isn't a checkpoint. There's also no reason to give Russ your gun. He can distract them perfectly fine unarmed. And he emptied the gun as well. Seriously, there was no point in giving him the gun. He could have just caused them to shoot by acting like he was going for a gun or making a finger pistol. David and Judy successfully sneak past the military checkpoint and arrive at a gas station where they try to find supplies and a truck. Man, wouldn't it be nice to have that gun right now? You would think that they would have learned by now that splitting up only causes problems. On Judy's adventure, she finds truckloads of dead bodies and bullet casings. This information doesn't really change much. It should already be pretty obvious that the military's gotten paranoid and trigger happy.
Just stop it?
If we get
Can
to
you
Cedar
stop
Rapids...
pretending everything is gonna be okay?
He's not. He's providing solutions while you complain and moan. But by all means, let's just sit here and wallow until someone comes and kills us. Judy finally comes to her senses and they split up yet again. David has the important task of gathering supplies and finding an operational vehicle with keys, while Judy has the important task of having a sit and pouring a fresh glass of water. The only explanation for their stupidity is that they're infected and losing their minds too. I don't know how you could be so nonchalant when almost every location you've been to so far has had homicidal maniacs, paranoid survivors, or hostile soldiers at it. Yep, psychos are here too. Get a weapon, come on, there you go. Hopefully you can fake dead better than in the hospital from earlier. I bet you're really regretting splitting up right about now. Oh, they both decided to hide in the room full of dead bodies. Perfect.
God damn it!
I really wish people would just shut the f up while someone else is trying to do an important task. That's like the third time she's done that to him. He knows it's urgent. He's always known that. Don't start stressing him out even more while he's trying to figure it out. David figures the corpse they pulled out of the driver's seat probably has the keys and gets ambushed when he tries to snag them. Realistically, an AR-15 round would sail through that door like a hot knife through butter, and Judy would be very dead right now. You know, when the guy you're fighting takes a good wrench to the face and barely flinches, you're gonna have a bad time. It looks like Judy was able to get into the back of the cabin to avoid the rifle rounds, and then take the crazy by surprise with a solid headshot. David finishes the other infected guy off by flicking a Zippo at him like a classic action hero, and they haul ass out of town in the semi. On the radio, there's some kind of countdown being broadcasted. I think we can safely assume that it's nothing good. The fact that it's on a broad channel going to all soldiers in the area indicates that they're trying to evacuate the area before they hit it with a bomb or something. That was more than just a bomb. It's likely a plane-mounted B-61 Mod 7 340 kiloton strategic nuke, which is in service currently. This nuke should be survivable with the distance they covered in the truck. Considering they may have gotten a mile or so out of town, this would have put them outside of the fireball, heavy blast damage radius, and radiation radius. But like what occurred in the movie, they were still inside the moderate blast damage radius, which easily could have flipped their truck. They are also inside the thermal blast radius, but the truck provided some protection against it. I didn't think the situation was bad enough to require a nuke. I don't see how they can keep a domestic nuclear strike a few hours away from a major city under wraps anymore. The satellite caught David and Judy walking towards Cedar Rapids and initiated another quarantine zone. It's not really clear if they were initiating the quarantine zone because of David and Judy or because Cedar Rapids was contaminated as well. I have a hard time believing it was because of David and Judy. They already caught them on the satellite. They just need to swing an Apache by and hit them with a chain gun. Not much of a happy ending, but it would solve the problem. It also wouldn't be caused by the water supply being contaminated, because Cedar Rapids River flows south through the fictional town of Ogden Marsh. It was likely quarantined because some other infected people already made it there. Again, with how self-limiting this virus is, because it's not airborne and the hosts show incredibly obvious signs after 2 days, and are dead after 3 or more days max, it's not really that much of a problem. You know, as long as you don't crash another plane filled with TRIXIE into the Cedar Rapids water supply. Post-credits, they show a news reporter saying that there was a chemical plant explosion in Ogden Marsh which caused the fireball. To be fair, chemical warehouse explosions can be absolutely massive, but I seriously doubt you could cover up a domestic nuclear explosion. At the very end of the news report, it cuts to David, who turned into a crazy because of his knife wound contamination. Just kidding, I don't know if it's him, but Cedar Rapids is now under siege from the TRIXIE Crazies. The movie ends. Let's recap who would have lived or died if the characters made the best possible choices. If the government followed its own guidance and regulations, the TRIXIE virus should not have escaped the triple packaging. Even if it did, there should not have been enough of it to infect the entire town. In this case, nobody would have died. If we did accept that the virus made it out of the plane and into the water supply, well, at that point, everyone would be dead. If it wasn't for their immense amount of luck, the virus should have infected them from drinking the same water for a week. The soldiers should have gunned them down for breaching the quarantine. The Apache should have disintegrated them with Hydra rockets for trying to run in a 1973 Ford police cruiser, and the Crazies should have killed them for splitting up and being oblivious. I think with our guidance, the military could have packaged the virus properly, and we could have beaten the TRIXIE virus from the Crazies. Thanks for watching, and remember, at the first sign of an apocalypse, run for it and leave everyone else behind. They're probably already dead.